How are you?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say good evening to everyone. We really appreciate you taking your Wednesday evening to come out and to be able to hear a presentation that is called Blueprint Irondale. Several months ago, you filled out a survey to share with us how you wanted your city to look in the next 5 to 20 years. We did not want you to think that we had forgot about you or we just did those surveys in vain. We have the Regional Planning Commission with us here tonight, and they are going to go through the responses. I think that there are over 17 different responses that we had as a part of that survey, and they're going to give you the results of the survey. We're also looking for your input to be able to share additional information. This is not the final format, but this is the presentation to be able to get feedback from the audience. We are here to serve you. We want the city to be exactly the way that you want to be in the future. I realize that everybody wants more retail, more restaurants, and I'm trying to think what else that I've heard over this time span. I want to let you know that we are diligently working to be able to bring those things to the city of Irondale. And again, I want to thank you for coming out tonight. Looking forward to your feedback. We're going to start in the next 7 to 8 minutes, or we may just go ahead and so that you can get out early. I know that there may be some Atlanta Braves fans or Houston Astros that are in the audience, and we want to make sure that we get you home so that you can indulge in watching the World Series. I also want to let everybody know that this plan is nothing that has been developed that will ever be something in concrete. It is fluid, it's recommendations, it's a plan on how we can move forward with the city, but I don't want you all to think that everything that you see in this plan, we're going to do it on this date, at this time, because that's not what the plan is designed to be. The plan is very fluid. Can I get everybody to say that? Fluid. If you don't take anything away tonight, I want you to remember that the plan is fluid, and we will be able to give you an answer about your recommendations in the next 15 days. On that note, I will close and turn it over to Hunter from the Regional Planning Commission.
Hey everyone, thank you all for coming tonight. As Mayor Stewart introduced me, my name is Hunter Garrison. I am a senior planner at the Regional Planning Commission of Greater Birmingham, and I've had the privilege of being the project manager for this Blueprint Irondale Comprehensive Plan. I also got to work on the 2016 Irondale Comprehensive Plan, so it's kind of been great to get so much more engagement this time and have all of y'all's involvement. So, I thank you guys right now for that coming out tonight. So with that, can everybody hear me okay, by the way? I'd rather speak like this than into a microphone if possible, but I'll just try to project my voice as well as I can. So with that, we will go ahead and get rolling so everybody can go cheer for the Braves. I was born and raised in Northwest Georgia, so I'm cautiously optimistic. It's difficult being a Georgia sports fan. So the format tonight that we're going to walk through, and I'll repeat this as we go through the slides, is I'm going to do this presentation. At one point, I'm going to hand it off to Jason Fondren. with KPS, who helped us with some specific focus area recommendations. Then I'm gonna take back over. I'm gonna give high-level overviews of the recommendations from the plan, but out in the hallway, we have some copies of every plan chapter, and then we have banners that have all our goals and actions. That's where we want your feedback tonight following the presentation. There's some sticky dots. You can put the dots on the actions that you support, and if you have any comments or feedback for us, I'm gonna ask you to write it on those banners here tonight. If you get home and wish you had thought of something, that's okay. We've published the plan online at blueprintirondale.com. That's gonna be open for comment through November 14th. So you guys have quite a bit of time to comment online. There's a comment form, there's an email address, whichever way you prefer to give us feedback is great, because that is what we're here for tonight. The plan is not final, this is the draft. We totally could have missed some things, we might have gotten some things wrong, so we want y'all to let us know if that happened, because ultimately this is a citizen-driven plan. We just use our planning knowledge to try to make those recommendations in a way that they can actually happen. So with that, I will get rolling with the presentation. All right, so why is a comprehensive plan update needed? You know, as I said, you guys did one in 2016. Well, we want to create new goals and actions that focus on the city's needs today based on input from 2021, not 2016. And in planning in general, it's considered a best practice to update plans every 5 years. So again, we want to create goals and actions based on new input. We want to capitalize on Irondale's recent growth and development. Much of the auto dealerships did not exist here in 2016, so it's ushered in a lot of change. The city has additional monies to implement some of these actions. We want to direct new growth and development in the right way. We want to protect Irondale's natural resources. And we want to create detailed recommendations for downtown Irondale, Grants Mill Station, and the Grants Mill Road corridor, which was from Old Leeds Road to Overton Road. And then finally, it guides public investments, and it informs modifications and changes to the zoning ordinance, but the plan itself does not directly modify the zoning ordinance in any way. So this just kind of backs that up. We asked people during the survey if they participated in the progress of the 2016 comprehensive plan, and only 21% of people said they did. So, you know, almost 80% of our feedback were from residents who just didn't hear about, didn't participate, or weren't here in 2016. And we're really proud of the numbers that we got in this plan. I think it really had more engagement than, you know, per population than any of our other cities. So the comprehensive plan process helps to answer what is the state of Irondale today. That's when we did our existing conditions analysis, which is a document that we've already published on the website, but is also, you know, still up there for you to view. What are the issues today and your vision for the future? So that's where we got public input. How will the city achieve that vision for the future? So that's where we developed the plan. And then how will the city know it's achieving that vision? Well, we have, there are benchmarks set in the plan and an implementation guide to kind of help the city check off if they're hitting those goals. So this is just the organization of the plan. It's divided into 8 chapters with 2 appendices. We have a plan overview or introduction that just explains what the plan is, how to use it. Irondale Today, that's a look at the existing conditions. Our focus area assessment, future land use, that's the part that guides zoning. Livability and code reform, that's where we make recommended code changes and actions that can improve the livability, quality of life for Irondale residents. Transportation and mobility, recreation and green systems, that's your parks and recreation, but also, you know, how stormwater is managed. Anything you would consider environmental will fall in there. And then economic development, that's kind of your business forward chapter. And then the public involvement summary, that's, you know, it's a very transparent process. We document all the public input we get along the way, and then the existing conditions document. All right, so this is a statement that's on the inside of the plan. That's just a reminder that the plan is not a legally binding document. One way you could think about this is if you wanted to retire early, would you get there easier if you used a financial advisor or if you just tried to figure it out yourself? you'd probably use the financial advisor, but sometimes life happens. You need to make changes and pivot on the spot. That's kind of what the plan is. It gets the city to where it wants to be, but it acknowledges that new opportunities may emerge that we didn't anticipate, or you have to make rapid changes and take advantage of those. All right, so this is where we start walking through each chapter. This is our plan overview. It's going to detail Irondale's location in the region, the background and need for the comprehensive plan, the legal foundation for planning in Alabama, the difference between the comprehensive plan and your zoning ordinance, which again is that legal component of land use, and then plan organization and a summary of the public involvement process. Okay, so what is a comprehensive plan? I kind of just walked through that, but it's your roadmap for making long and short range policy decisions. It guides future growth and redevelopment of the city by guiding zoning decisions and public and private investments. It's useful for making recommendations regarding community services, infrastructure, community character, and economic vitality, and it's based on public input. It's a long-term vision for the future that is usually 5, but really 10 years out oftentimes. Another great reason for a plan is that oftentimes many grants will not award projects unless they're already part of a citizen-driven plan. So, if the city has an idea for a grant and that idea is in the plan or something adjacent to it, it's much more likely to receive that grant and that funding. So this is our public involvement overview. Again, a lot of this is online, so I'm going to move through this pretty quickly because we do have a lot to go through. We received 1,148 visioning survey responses, which represented about 10% of Irondale's population, a little more than that. 214 online map comments. Nearly 80 people attended virtual and in-person meetings. And then we had nearly 3,000 unique visitors to the website. All of those things, the visioning survey, the map, our opportunities banners that we had available online and at the public kickoff meeting, and then our advisory committee's input. We kind of synthesize all those. That's our role as planner, and then we make those recommendations, and those turn into this document. So for a complete overview of that process, you can see Appendix A. That's published online. Again, that's at blueprintirondale.com. So now, plan contents. This is just part of the introduction chapter where we give a big overview of kind of all those things I rattled off of what each chapter details. We want this to be a very usable document. We know that you don't sit down and read a comprehensive plan like a book. Instead, you pick up and apply the sections that you're most involved in or that the city is working towards the most directly in a short time frame. So again, we try to make it well organized and easy for you all to use. Irondale today, that's our existing conditions analysis. We couldn't make good recommendations for Irondale if we didn't understand what was happening on the ground today. So we look at regional assets, demographic profiles, educational attainment, income and housing profiles, employment, the transportation and mobility system that you have today, parks and recreational facilities, existing land use, and then the existing zoning. So again, that's just what some of those pages look like in the document. We try to make that in a very easy to read, easy to understand format. And Appendix B of the plan includes that full copy of the existing conditions document. So focus areas, this is where I'm going to hand it over to Jason Fondren with KPS Group, and he's going to detail those recommendations for those areas.
Thanks, Hunter. Good evening.
Good evening.
Let me ask a quick question. How many of you have lived in Irondale for more than 20 years? How many have lived here less than 5? All right, okay, cool. All right, so KPS Group, we're an architecture and planning firm here in Birmingham. We were asked by the Regional Planning Commission to help evaluate 3 locations in the city and do some analysis, put together some recommendations of what is possible in those locations, what would help to meet your goals for the improvement of the community based on what we heard through the surveys and the community meetings. And those are downtown, of course, a really important place in Irondale for all of the community. The Grants Mill Station area, and then the Grants Mill Road corridor from Old Leeds Road to Overton Road. So jumping into downtown Irondale, we started out the process after the first community meeting, did some analysis of the areas, each of those 3 focus areas, and then did a kind of first blush listing of some things that could happen in those different areas. And so just to describe what we saw in downtown Irondale, we noted that there are a cluster of home improvement and design type businesses as well as Studio by the Tracks and some other kind of related design type art related businesses already in the area. And we thought, this could be a type of businesses that the community really tries to support and grow that in the downtown area. Similar to what you see if you guys familiar with the Pepper Place area in Birmingham. Well, you have very similar type of businesses kind of clustered together there. And so you have a lot of people visiting not only during the week but on the weekends. And from that, of course they grew the farmers market and coffee shops and cafes and things like that in the Pepper Place area. So you have sort of a unique opportunity to work with some of the businesses that you already have downtown to create that type of environment like they've done with Pepper Place in Birmingham. In addition to all the other assets that you have in downtown. You also have some daytime population nearby, the industrial parks and the industries within a half mile and mile of downtown. You have a lot of people near downtown from 7 to 5 o'clock every day of the week. They need things to eat, right? With downtown being so close, it could be a place, there's some opportunities for downtown to grow some more dining opportunities to serve that population that's so close by. In addition to the primary access into downtown right now is everybody kind of recognizes, particularly if you're not necessarily from Irondale, if you're coming in from the interstate or from Crestwood Boulevard, you generally come through 20th Street. That's where the signage is. But as we all know, there are 2 sets of railroad tracks that come between you and downtown if you're coming from 78. One of an alternate route that locals probably know better than anybody else is 16th Street bypasses both of those railroad tracks. So promoting 16th Street as another entryway into downtown and looking at how that can be improved, signed, and marketed as a way to get, particularly for people from outside of Irondale, to get them into downtown. I remember a few times coming to the Whistle Stop Festival. I lived in Crestwood for about 15 years, so just a stone's throw away. But coming in to the Whistle Stop Festival and it being a little difficult to get in and out, so promoting different ways to get in out of downtown not only helps people get to businesses that they're coming to, just on the spur of the moment, but also if you're going to be having events downtown, you need to have a lot of good ways in and out. You have good neighborhoods around your downtown area, so you have, in addition to that daytime worker population that you have nearby, you have people living nearby who would like to frequent downtown businesses. The city owns a lot of property downtown, including this facility that we're in tonight. Possibility of rethinking how those work, whether some move to other locations, possibly the Public Works site, which is not the prettiest thing to have right in the middle of downtown. What could you do with that property if that were to be located somewhere else? First Avenue South has not historically been sort of a focus for downtown efforts. It's always been sort of First Avenue North. If you switched or at least expanded the focus to look a little bit more closely at what you could accomplish on First Avenue South, which is a little easier to get to despite the railroads, what could you accomplish there? And then, of course, Irondale has become a more and more, there's been a lot of popularity around bicycling in the Irondale area, so we want to look at, well, how can we make downtown a little more bicycle friendly? The recommendations that we put together, you'll see on the screen a visual of some changes that could take place in downtown to ramp up some economic opportunities as well as residential in and around downtown. As the mayor mentioned at the outset, we all know that the folks in Irondale want to have more places to eat and more places to shop. One of the things that communities need to be able to do to recruit businesses is to have a strong and growing population. Irondale has seen increased residential development over the last several years, which is a good sign. You're heading in the right direction. One of the phrases that we often use is that retail follows rooftops. If you have more rooftops around downtown, you're going to have more retail around downtown. So we did look at some opportunities. You'll see this once you have a chance to look at the plan and closer up. We did look at some opportunities to include some more residential in and around downtown. And again, focusing on First Avenue South this time around and looking at how you could both through some public and private investments gain a little more critical mass in terms of business development and more activity downtown that will help drive up interest in retail and dining. So we've suggested taking Public Works, moving it somewhere else, don't care where. Mayor, that's your job. You find another place for Public Works. I'm sure you got some more property. They don't really need anything that's high profile like out on Highway 78. Just something that's accessible by some trucks. But it's a little over half a block right in the middle of downtown if you consider First Avenue South as part of the middle of downtown. Then there's a lot you can accomplish there. The idea would be that the city recruits a private developer to come and say, we've got this land here, we'll give it to you, or we'll sell it to you for a really cheap price, and you come build some retail, some restaurants, and maybe some housing on this site. So to create that incentive by making the property available either for free or a low price, however you negotiate it. Again, that's up to you, mayor and council, to deal with that. But to incentivize private investment in downtown and create some more activity there. We also have suggested, because there has been some consideration of, and there's already kind of moved some functions of city functions out towards Grants Mill Station, that what could we do if, for example, the police headquarters were to move somewhere else? Because that's right at the corner of 20th and First Avenue South, so that's like a really important corner. What could you do there that would be more valuable in terms of the growth of downtown? We've suggested, you could do a lot of different things there if police were shifted to another location. We suggested a downtown park, a place where you could have, if you're going to have the Whistle Stop Festival or some other functions downtown, to have a true home for it with enough space for people to spread out, have your Christmas tree lighting and other types of civic and community events in a very central, high-profile location downtown. If you get some more restaurants and other stuff happening downtown, It spills out into the park, and they reinforce one another, the retail, restaurants, and park. And again, it could be something else. You could put some buildings there. You could leave police there. But we thought it was an intriguing idea. Downtown kind of needs more green space, and that might be because of its location, the centrality of it would be a good place to do something like that. And again, back to the idea of 16th Street being promoting that as another way to get into downtown. We suggested, and this is sort of a long-term project. It may or may not be feasible from a financial perspective in the near term, but creating a better access into downtown once you pass underneath that second viaduct to peel off before you get to 2nd Avenue and connect that up to 1st Avenue North. And there would require some land acquisition. There's already some right-of-way there. There's some grading that would have to be done to make all that work. It doesn't have to be a big, wide, crazy road. Just has to get cars in and out, particularly when you're having big events downtown. It would be good to have that sort of release valve to be able to get people out of downtown, especially if there are trains blocking the way. And also at the intersection of 2nd Avenue and 16th, it's sort of a crazy little intersection there. We've suggested putting in a roundabout that would help organize traffic flow through that intersection so that everything comes into the roundabout and then goes around and through there. One of the benefits of doing a roundabout in that location is because that is sort of a gateway into downtown if you're coming from the west. Not from 78. So, like when I came into downtown for the Whistle Stop Festival a few years back, I came in the back way. But that would create a really strong entrance. You have opportunities to do some landscaping, signage, and so improve the functionality, safety of the intersection, and do some image beautification improvements at the same time with the roundabout. So as you look further south along 2nd Avenue South, the Public Works site goes from 1st Avenue South down to 2nd Avenue South. We don't necessarily want to see stores and businesses encroaching into the neighborhood along 2nd Avenue South because 2nd Avenue South is all homes. So in terms of what might happen there on that part of the Public Works site would be some type of residential. It could be townhouses or something that's maybe a little bit denser. That's probably what a developer would try to achieve to get to make the project more desirable for them. And then, of course, some streetscape improvements on 1st Avenue South and some of the streets connecting into downtown or into 1st Avenue South from the south side. We did some early drawings of what 1st Avenue South could look like. So you have, of course, on one side you have City Hall, and then 1st Avenue South, some parking area, and then the railroad. There are no trees. There's very little sidewalk. There's no sidewalk on the north side. There's only a little bit of sidewalk on the City Hall side. And if you're trying to make 1st Avenue South a better contributor to the sort of downtown environment you want, you got to have sidewalks, and also have some trees and lighting and things like that. So here's a closer look. So if you look at this image on the right side, you see this little gray strip. That's this building right here. It's gray. As I heard somebody commenting on the gray buildings when we were coming in this evening. But so on the right side, that's City Hall. You just see a little strip of it. And then 1st Avenue South going up to the railroad. The railroad is on the left side. What we've shown here in this diagram, you've got a larger sidewalk along 1st Avenue South beside the City Hall. Then angled parking on parallel parking and angled parking added into the mix. You already have some parking on the railroad side. It's mostly sort of gravel and kind of undefined. And there's actually a lot of space there, more than you need for the perpendicular parking that you have. So we recapture some of that extra space to put in more sidewalk. And the sort of bluish green stripe that you'll see on the right-hand side is a two-way bicycle track, or two bicycle lanes that you use to get into and out of downtown from the east and west sides, connecting up to what could happen on 16th Street or what might happen further east. And then rendering, looking at the opportunities. We had with our advisory committee a few months back, we looked at some different images of what they thought would be good to have the types of and character of development in downtown. So those areas that we identified, the public works site and some future development sites along First Avenue South, try to incorporate those design cues that we heard from the committee into it. So you'll see in this image, you'll see the downtown park on the police building corner, as well as some multi-story development along First Avenue South with retail restaurants and businesses on the ground floor, and possibly some housing on the upper 2 or 3 floors. And that kind of continues as you go a little further east. And of course, we do have some recommendations on the north side to help make things function a little bit better there. Of course, that's where most people think of downtown because of the cafe and the things that are on the north side. There are some infill development opportunities. There are some places where some additional buildings could be built, and there certainly needs to be an effort to work on parking availability. There's the parking in the back of the buildings could be cleaned up and reorganized to get a little bit more capacity back there. And then I mentioned at the beginning of this the kind of Pepper Place model. On the east side of First Avenue North, that's where you have a lot of those businesses. So look at some ways to encourage those businesses to improve facades of those buildings, make some improvements to get people walking back and forth from the east to west within that area, and that would kind of be the heart of where you would create that design home design district for downtown. Okay, so Grants Mill Station. Opportunities there, of course, you've got a very large shopping center, and the property across Grants Mill, where the Sam's Club used to be. The city has moved some municipal functions over to Grants Mill Station currently. You've got Beacon Park behind the shopping center. And which could be a little better connected into the kind of commercial part of Grants Mill Station. There's plenty of opportunity for residential development along the Grants Mill corridor, like you've seen over the last several years, and opportunities to make some improvements, some beautification improvements along both Grants Mill and Beacon Drive. And of course, how do we support bicycle mobility in this area as well? So some of the recommendations, we put together a plan just to kind of visionary look at what could happen at Grants Mill Station. So we take the parking lot and we start putting buildings in. And we turn the driveway that kind of circles around in front of the buildings and turn that into a main street. Of course, once we put new buildings in there and take away that parking, we got to create some more parking, right? We can't just take that parking away and hope things work out. So we looked at the site and saw that the space behind the former Walmart building, of course, that's the driveway that takes you back to the park. There's a big incline between the building and the street level on the back side. A good opportunity to put in a relatively inexpensive parking structure that you can enter from the driveway going back to the park, or you can enter the lower level from the shopping center, and you don't have to have ramp. You don't have to build a ramp going up from one level to the next. So you just would enter the upper level from one side and enter the bottom level from the shopping center side. And you get a lot of parking capacity back behind that building. Of course, you want to have a pleasant walk from any such, any kind of parking structure like that into the shopping areas. And so you'll see in these images, once you get a closer look, there's good pedestrian access. There's we've recommended putting in an overlook and open space kind of on the access along the between the parking structures, in an area where you could walk up to that street that takes you to the park, and provide some additional pedestrian access into Beacon Park. We've also made some suggestions about how to improve. You've already got some neighborhood access into the park. You need to make sure that you have good access from the shopping center to the park and back and forth. Sometimes when we look at a redevelopment scenario like this, we would typically want to put the park kind of somewhere in the middle of the redevelopment, because you already have a park. We wanted to look at how to create a stronger connection between what you already have as an asset and what could happen within the shopping center with some private reinvestment there. And of course, landscaping and beautification. You've got that big grass hill that wraps around the base of the shopping center. Look at some creative ways to beautify that. Add some signage. We put together a graphic showing some signage to go on that corner for the advisory committee, and we heard some really bad responses from that. So we did not include that. But it could be signage that's for the city, or it could be signage that's for Grants Mill Station for the development, for the private side. It could be either way, because that intersection is a big gateway for Irondale. So we held off on doing any more signage recommendations there, because we failed miserably the first time. But there's also there's some opportunities to improve, to green up Grants Mill Road. You're one of the few roadways in the Jefferson County area that still has a green median. Keep that, and look for opportunities to expand that a little bit. When Grants Mill Road was widened many years ago, they put in the 5-lane. And so you had an opportunity to have a little bit more median continuing away from the interstate, but that kind of got cut off. Like to get some more of that back in, get some more trees up along Grants Mill Road, and treat it more like an Irondale road and not just a bypass for the folks trying to get to 459 and 280. Which I've done that too. All right. So again, I suggested, when you put in those buildings, organize them in a way that you're able to create a sort of walkable downtown-ish Main Street environment, putting some parking along those streets, which is great. People who are going to downtowns or in that kind of environment, they like that on-street parking when they can find it. It's easy access, but then we also have the parking structure recommended too. And this is just a rendering of how that all might look with some of those improvements to those connections to the park and to that, You'll see at the bottom of the screen that little green space leading from the shopping center up to that street that takes you over to the park. Does it have a name? Is that Beacon? Beacon what? Okay. So Beacon Drive is the main one that comes off of Grants Mill, and then you turn off Beacon. It's Beacon Park Drive. All right, so that's what I'm going to refer to it from now on. Anyway, so you have that open space that makes that connection. There are some opportunities also. There's been that part of the shopping center that has remained undeveloped since it was built on the corner over on the Beacon Drive side. There's some opportunity for some development there, and you can kind of see looking into how that might look again, taking in some of those design cues that we heard from the advisory committee. And Grants Mill Road Corridor, I'm taking a lot of time to do this. I didn't mean to. So I'll wrap this up pretty quickly. Grants Mill Road Corridor, it's a big corridor. It's got a lot of different things happening on it. There are some things already in the works that many of you probably already know about. You're seeing dirt moved. There are plans, last I heard anyway, that Grants Mill Road would be widened heading south from Old Leeds Road. I haven't seen what that's going to look like. I suspect it's going to be very expensive and may take some time to do that. A roundabout at one time was proposed. There are some turning movements, which if you've gone through there and if you're headed south, passing Old Leeds Road, there's that left turn that comes right after the intersection. That's the one. It's nobody living there. It's not your fault that you have to make that left turn, but it's kind of a mess. So I believe it was suggested the roundabout would help to correct that, so everybody can kind of work through that intersection more smoothly. It seems like a good idea. I hope it works, and I hope it happens. We've kind of reinforced that here as one of the things that we'd like to see happen. Of course, Interstate 459 interchange at Grants Mill. I've said Gateway a lot. I'm going to say it again here because this is a really big one. People who get off that interchange who aren't from Grants or who aren't from Irondale may not know that they are entering into Irondale, that all those car dealerships, that's Irondale, Alabama. So, there's an opportunity to put your name out there and tell people who are getting off that interchange, welcome to Irondale. Enjoy your stay. We're proud of what we have. A traffic light, sure. Some of the other opportunities, of course, there's going to continue to be some interest in auto-related development there, which is really good. And the precedent is already set, and we want to see all that stuff fill in around on the south side of the interchange. We do also have the Caba River in the area, and we want to see that taken care of. So the development that happens in the area should be done sensitively to that. There's also some opportunity on the north side for some residential development. You've got a lot of hilly land, a lot of topographic changes on that north side, but there's still some developable land there. And we just, in terms of looking at how that ought to be developed, it would make more sense from an environmental standpoint for that to be residential rather than leveling those hills to put in any big shopping centers or industries up there on that hillside. So this is a concept for how some residential could be put in on that site above the Mercedes-Benz dealership. One of the things that we recommend in here, if you're going to do some residential, or see some residential occurring there, want to have a lot of the draws and other areas preserved as green space, which would, it can be done so that it becomes an open space amenity for the residential, but also can help to facilitate stormwater in that area, and also help to avoid a lot of grading that could happen that might lead to erosion issues later on. Depending on what happens with the Grants Mill Road widening, there probably should be some effort to get a bicycle or pedestrian bicycle trail in that part of Grants Mill, because there are, of course, part of that Red Rock Ridge and Valley Trail system, that's so hard to say, is having the, bicycle facilities on Old Leeds Road. You've got some on Grants Mill on once you get above Old Leeds Road, and then there are other facilities planned south. So we're trying to make connections here. It's also a really beautiful, beautiful part of the city, and to be able to walk it and bicycle it, I think would be a really great thing, and a great thing for people to be able to enjoy that from outside of their cars. That area between Old Leeds Road and the interchange. I've driven it many, many times, and I think it's one of the most underappreciated streets in our area. Interchange, again, it's a big gateway into the city. How can you make that create a stronger impression for Irondale? What we've seen done in some other communities is take overpasses and design them as gateways. It's done a lot in Georgia. It is not done very much in Alabama, but with pressure put in the right places, ALDOT will agree to things like this, but you've got to be visionary. Hopefully this was received better than the one we did for Grants Mill Station. But you can find in a lot of communities, particularly on the north side of Atlanta, they've started redoing a lot of those overpasses, and they're all a little different. Each community has slightly different design to those overpasses. That's the only one we have, but some landscaping, some flowers for color. You can use lighting and sculpture and other things to lay out the red carpet for people and let them know they're entering Irondale. It's a special place.
So sometimes I'm one of those pesky bikers that goes up Grants Mill on Tuesday night, and it would be slightly more enjoyable if it was beautiful like that. So thank you, Jason. That was really great. I'm going to try to speed through this. This will be the lightning round, so I'm going to go through the rest of the chapters pretty quickly to respect y'all's time. But if I move quickly after the meeting, just grab me if you have a cut off on that TV, but I think we're okay. Just look at this one. All right, so Chapter 4, Future Land Use. This is the chapter that guides zoning. Again, it's a broader vision than zoning, and it's not legally binding. It's just supposed to be a roadmap that can guide your planning and zoning commission. So goal number 1, we want to encourage redevelopment in existing commercial areas. We want to protect environmentally sensitive areas. That's goal 2. Number 3, we want to encourage sustainable long-term development patterns. And then goal 4, encourage a wide range of housing types. So encourage redevelopment in existing commercial areas by encouraging mixed-use development and adopting a new mixed-use zoning district. And then we want to encourage and incentivize infill development and redevelopment. This is really just supporting the action of Jason's recommendations for Grants Mill Station and some key areas of downtown, but some of that we also want to preserve as well. Goal 2, protect environmentally sensitive areas. Protect the Cabo River by reducing development intensity via step-down approach. What that means is you don't want a high density of pavement or asphalt once you get close to the river. Single-family homes are more appropriate, and then when you're very close to the river, you don't want any new development that's creating stormwater that's running off into the river. I'll talk about this more in green systems, but I think one thing that's really important for Irondale to do is to protect the Cabo River. It's a valuable asset that is unique, like your access to it is unique within the region, and it's one of the most biodiverse rivers in the world. What that means is that it has a really high density of unique species that brings people in from all around the region to see and visit the river for canoeing or other recreation such as fishing or even just wading in it. And even if you don't care about doing those outdoorsy type things, you should still want to protect the river because it's also an economic resource for Irondale. If it's marketed as this sort of adventure or ecotourism destination, then people will come in from out of town, they'll visit the river, and then they'll spend money in Irondale as you implement these other ideas. So not only is it an environmental resource, but it is an economic resource from that perspective. So we want to protect environmentally sensitive areas. We want to modify the zoning ordinance to include conservation subdivisions. Again, that's some of the recommendations from that Grants Mill Road corridor. Here in this little graphic, I know it's a little hard to see. You've got the same number of houses in those diagrams. The one there where the cursor is what's existing. This is a conventional subdivision that you would have seen built from the 1970s through today. And then there's this idea of a conservation subdivision that really tries to work with the topography. You get the same number of houses, the same number of square footage. These are still single-family homes, but you might have shared green space, less cul-de-sacs, things like that, so that you're not clear-cutting. Instead, you're working with the existing topography to create houses that kind of work with nature instead of against it. Development should be limited in areas that intersect with a 100-year floodplain, streams, or wetlands, have slopes greater than 20%, as those can cause major runoff issues or landslides, and then ones that are considered prime farmland. There's not a lot of prime farmland areas in Irondale because of the topography, but there is quite a bit of floodplain and steep slopes. So this map, this is viewable in the plan at a higher level of detail. You can see areas that are a challenge to develop on and should probably be preserved. I want to encourage sustainable long-term development patterns. That means continuing to grow as a city of residential areas supported by activity centers. You can see in this map, which is also in the plan, that right now, today, there's a number of neighborhoods in Irondale, but there's really 3 key ones. One is downtown Irondale with the supporting activity center of downtown and the neighborhood that surrounds it. Then you have Grants Mill Station and the Beacon Park area and those neighborhoods that are adjacent to Grants Mill Road. And then you have a new one developing, which is where the upcoming grocery store is and the Tower Homes development. That's going to be another activity center. So what we want to see is development and redevelopment occurring in those areas where it's already happening and preserving your other unique resources and more rural character, because a lot of people value those rural homes and they don't want to see those develop as intensely. So encourage a wide range of housing types, encourage the development of new housing to achieve a mix of housing types at a range of price points, and then provide new housing options for seniors and those with special needs. The below graphic is that's a rendering from Kirkwood by the river. These are some single-family homes that are being developed for people who are in a more transitional stage, but they can fully support themselves, but it's just more about part of being a community. So Irondale's already doing some of that, and we want to acknowledge it, but it's also important to know that, if you have an increasing senior population, you want to have housing in place so that people can age where they are and stay within the community versus feeling like they need to move elsewhere. So chapter 5, this is where we make recommendations that affect quality of life, and then also very specific code reform recommendations that are potential modifications you can do to your zoning code. So goal 1, adopt codes and programs to improve the conditions of rental housing units. And you know what? I'm gonna go through all these. So instead of reading it all here, I'm just gonna do it as I go through the slides to save a little time. Goal 1, adopt codes and programs to improve the conditions of rental housing. So we want to modify the zoning ordinance to include additional regulations to ensure the health, safety, welfare, and aesthetic improvements of duplexes, townhome apartments, and multifamily dwelling units have their residents in mind. What this means is there's things like good landlord programs, landlord registration, so you can know who actually owns the property, and the city can pursue them with fines and code violations if they aren't maintaining their rental properties as they should. There's nothing wrong with rental units. I rented for years when I moved to Birmingham, and I took care of it. But what you don't want is rentals that turn over, don't have leases, things like that, and there's no accountability for the owners. So enhance code enforcement efforts and encourage better property maintenance. Create a vacant property registration ordinance. This is if you own a vacant property, you must register it with the city so they can contact you if there are code issues, violations such as grass that's uncut or just trash, things that you see like in this photo. Create a rental property licensing inspection system and establish a good landlord program. That's a lot of the things I just spoke about. Consider the adoption of the 2021 International Property Maintenance Code. Basically, if your city council adopts this code, it will allow you to fine people for code violations on the property owner rather than attach liens to the dilapidated property. So, a lien might keep them from doing something, but a direct fine can accumulate and, usually incentivize them to take an action quicker. And it outlines maintenance for the regulation of weed and debris, junk vehicles, public decency, and dilapidated properties. Goal 3, enhance the physical character and appearance of the city. Clearly define gateways, as Jason demonstrated in his part of the presentation, and continue to permit and promote public art murals on blank walls around Irondale. These are just things that create a lot of character and make Irondale feel unique. And they're sort of a low-hanging fruit opportunity. If you have a blank space, you can probably find an artist to fill that in. Enhance public services, facilities, and programs throughout the city. Explore the feasibility of constructing a recreation and/or community center for Irondale residents, and build a community storm shelter for Irondale residents. If there's a tornado, we want everybody to have a place to go. So recommended zoning ordinance revisions to enhance urban form. Adapt an adaptive reuse ordinance. This is just an ordinance that would allow you to reuse an existing historic building without having to update every single component of it, and it makes it viable. Birmingham has done a lot with this. You can see that downtown on sort of the heaviest corner on earth. But it can also be used for industrial buildings. Adopt a mixed-use zoning district, and continue to encourage the use of the PUD, which is the R6 district, to promote flexibility, creativity, and a mix of uses. The PUD district is doing great. We don't really see any need to change that, but it doesn't allow every type of use that a mixed-use one would. So we'd like to see both in the zoning code, ideally. Revisions to parking and access standards, revise parking requirements and location criteria for certain development types, and allow on-street parking to count towards minimum parking requirements in all commercial districts. Sometimes minimum parking requirements can be very burdensome, and if you want a space that's very walkable, has a unique downtown feel, you don't need to require a lot of parking spaces. Area residents will walk to it if they live close by, and when you have that vast sea of parking, it's not very walkable or inviting. It's hotter. It's not someplace you want to spend time. So recommended zoning ordinance revisions to permitted uses. Provide a definition for live-work units and permit live-work units in all zoning districts except for low-density residential, single-family, and industrial districts. What live-work units means is that you could live above a business you owned if it was a two-story building. This is a way that humans have lived for honestly hundreds of years. So we just like to see a zoning code that can reflect that. Permit upper-story residential uses in the C1 business and C2 commercial districts. That just means you could have an apartment or small townhome above a business, like you can see in these photos. And then add a definition for brewery, microbrewery, and brew pub to the zoning code, and revise the permitted uses in C1 and C2 to permit them accordingly. Very popular right now. It's just a slight tweak to allow them in the permitted uses within certain districts. Other recommended zoning ordinance revisions: modify the sign regulations to ensure content neutrality as a result of recent Supreme Court rulings. What that means is there was a recent Supreme Court case that ruled that you cannot regulate the content of a sign. So basically, if you have to read it, to tell if it's legal, it's illegal. That requirement is. So you can regulate size, you could regulate if it had flashing lights, but you can't regulate content, whether that be religious or promoting a certain type of business. And then establish and publish step-by-step application process guides for development and redevelopment, just to make that process a little bit easier. Chapter 6, transportation and mobility. 1, enhance the safety and efficiency of the existing transportation system. Develop a traffic calming policy to reduce speeding in neighborhoods utilizing appropriate traffic calming measures. What traffic calming is it's the first instinct is to think speed bumps, and those are a part of it, but there are a lot of other ways you can do that. You could plant little raised beds that help with drainage on the side of the road and narrows it a little bit, tightens it, and it makes people slow down naturally because, the most dangerous roads oftentimes are the ones that are wide straightaways because people text and drive and they stop paying attention on those. So if you have some traffic calming measures, you can slow down speeding in neighborhood streets. This picture is a great recommendation. There's a speed table before a crosswalk. That's important because it's going to slow down the cars if there's a pedestrian or kid crossing. There's also this island so they can't be drifting over it. Birmingham has recently implemented a traffic calming policy, which is available on their website and is a great go-by. Adopt access management standards for Crestwood Boulevard. Unfortunately, you can't retrofit this and make it perfect overnight, but by adopting these standards, you reduce the number of driveway cuts. Every single one of these driveway cuts is a conflict point. So instead, if you have shared parking lots that channel people towards one exit with maybe a single traffic control device, you increase safety because you don't have people making risky maneuvers because it's hard to get out, pulling out in front of people, and creating a lot of dangerous situations. You can also see in this photo, there's no center turn lane or suicide lane. Those are dangerous and they get people hurt. All right, build a multimodal transportation network with a wide range of choices, expand sidewalk coverage in residential areas, and build links from residential areas to activity centers, schools, recreational facilities, employment centers, and other major public facilities. That's a long way of saying we make connections to where they make sense, such as schools and places that you would like to walk, but maybe currently you can't because you don't feel safe. And then adopt a complete streets ordinance that would require the city to accommodate all modes of transportation in the planning, design, construction, operation, and maintenance of public streets. That just means you need to consider pedestrians and bicyclists wherever it's possible. And then, this map, it's hard to see on the screen, but in the plan, you can see it. That's where we're recommending expanding sidewalk coverage. And then construct bicycle infrastructure along strategic corridors. Add bike lanes or off-road separated greenways where it makes sense, and work with the Freshwater Land Trust, which is a great local organization that is implementing the Red Rock Ridge and Valley Trail system to create new connections to Ruffner Mountain. That's one of their stated major goals, to connect residents all throughout the Birmingham Metro to Ruffner via bike and pedestrian infrastructure. And these are just an example of some road treatments that would be appropriate on streets in Irondale. So make infrastructure maintenance investments a priority. This is something we heard a lot through public involvement. Nobody wants to hit potholes everywhere. They want nice, smooth streets, and it makes your city look better. So fortunately, Irondale's already got a 2017 pavement management plan. We'd just like to see them continue to resurface, and these things are happening, so this is an ongoing process. And then dedicate funding annually to implement the city's ADA, which is Americans for Disabilities Act, transition plan. That's a federally required thing that needs to happen, and it just increases accessibility at public buildings for everyone. Chapter 7, Recreation and Green Systems. I spoke a little bit about this earlier in protecting your resources because they're not only an environmental treasure, but also a way for the city to market itself and grow economically. So establish Irondale as a regional destination for adventure and ecotourism. Acquire land that is unsuitable for development due to some of those things I spoke to earlier. They're too steep, they're in a floodplain, and build trails on those. Make them a destination for mountain bikers or just for hikers, or as a nature, like Ruffner's already doing a lot of that, but there's a lot of potential for expansion, and that's going to bring people into Irondale. They will consider moving here to be close to those things, and if nothing else, they will visit and spend money in your city. Then you can market Irondale as an outdoor recreation destination through branding efforts and campaigns. You can have a Visit Irondale that walks people through like a website on, what destinations they should go to, where the trails are, how accessible they are, what type of user can use them, if they're advanced or for beginners, things like that, to promote the city and let people know that, you're welcoming that type of recreation and you want them to come here. And that is from Bentonville, Arkansas. They have created a lot of mountain bike trails and also greenways. They do have the luck of having the Waltons in town who fund a lot of those things. So I know not everybody is in that situation. But, they're marketing a resource they have, and Irondale has the same topography. They can do the same things. They'll have to do it slower, but it's certainly possible. So goal 2, maintain, enhance, and expand the Parks and Recreation system, develops a Parks and Rec master plan. I think this is critical for the future of Irondale. Explore the feasibility of constructing a recreation center, and then provide needed maintenance and improvement at existing Irondale parks. Parks are just a huge asset, and you want people to be proud of them, and it's a huge consideration for people in deciding where they want to live. So establish new parks in currently underserved areas. So we did a little mapping and found out that only about 35% of homes are within a half-mile or 10-minute walking distance of an existing park. In all honesty, it's probably a little bit lower than that because of topography challenges or roads that don't have pedestrian infrastructure, so it's not safe. So there may be some homes that are within that half mile that still feel inaccessible to park space. So we would like to see the city pursue potential new opportunities to create parks in some of those undeveloped spaces. So protect and preserve Irondale's natural resources through policy and development regulations, which achieve goals for sustainability, natural resource protection, and enhancing public access to nature. Adopt a riparian buffer ordinance is the first action there. That just means restricting development a certain distance from streams because it protects those streams and keeps stormwater from getting into your environment and your drinking water. And then protect Irondale's waterways via implementation of low-impact development and best management practices. These are just little things that can happen all over town where appropriate, and they really can go a long way to keep stormwater from accumulating, to keep areas from flooding, because nature is its own best filter, and you just implement that in a lot of areas around town through things like this little, this is a traffic calming measure, so it kind of knocks out 2 of those little goals. But then it's filled with natural plants, so instead of creating a big puddle here or more stormwater you have to navigate, it's going to soak that up and help mitigate those issues. And we got a lot of rain this year, so I think the need for that is pretty understood. Consider providing incentives and education to developers and homeowners who utilize low-impact development or green infrastructure techniques in new development. That could be expedited permitting if you're doing some of those techniques, or there's quite a few measures we recommend in the plan. There's mapping of where different treatments would be appropriate based off of some of our GIS data. And then finally, economic development. Foster economic development in Irondale. Adopt an adaptive reuse ordinance and promote creative reuse of existing vacant buildings. This is one in Denver, Colorado that was just an abandoned industrial building. It's called The Source, not unlike some buildings that are around our area. And what they've done is it's this central area that it has like a small bakery in it. There's several businesses in it. You could sort of think of it as the same model as the Pizzitz Food Hall, but not just food stalls. You can share spaces and have little pop-ups in there, and it has a lot of character. People are attracted to going in those old buildings. Establish an Irondale Main Street organization. That's just someone that can take charge, a nonprofit entity, and help promote downtown Irondale. They can go out and recruit businesses. And then plan pop-up events and festivals that promote downtown Irondale. This is one that happened in downtown Birmingham. They had some temporary storage containers that were put up, and there were some coffee shops in there. They put out some AstroTurf, so people came and sat in what was an unused parking lot. So incentivize, recruit, and attract more commercial and retail development throughout Irondale. That one kind of speaks for itself. We know everybody wants new restaurant and shopping options. And then create an online database of available retail, office, and industrial spaces that include key information such as size, zoning, lease rates, and conditions. This just makes it easy, and oftentimes developers or business owners will take that path of least resistance. Continue to support Irondale's workforce, small businesses, and startups. Explore the feasibility of creating a startup incubator or shared co-working space for new businesses. That's, a lot of people working from home now. There's a lot of startup businesses that just need a tiny amount of office space, but they can't afford a lease on something bigger. So it allows them to grow into that if the city has a property they could use or work with someone to acquire. And then market and promote Irondale as a hub for modern light industrial businesses. A lot of that's already happening adjacent to downtown. And, when people hear industrial, I think the word often conjures up images of smokestacks, loud noises, and some of that does exist. But with light industrial development now, it could be 3D printing and they have a warehouse or something, but you never hear them. It's not a big deal for them other than some truck traffic. They're not that incompatible with some residential buildings. So again, refresh branding to promote and market Irondale's unique assets. These are just some of the things I spoke about earlier. Modernize and promote a consistent branding strategy to promote that. I have noticed Irondale's updated its logo, things like that. So you're well on your way, and it's just creating that unified branding strategy that kind of promotes your destinations and assets. Chapter 9, implementation. This is part of that, ease of accessibility for the plan. So this is just a guide on, we have each action, what page it's on, its priority, which is what you're going to help us determine tonight and in the coming weeks via online comment, the time frame that it would take to do this, long term, maybe 20 years, maybe 10 plus. Short term are things you can achieve in 1 to 5 years, and then the potential partners that can help you do that, whether that's simply city boards, planning and zoning commission, the inspections department, or nonprofits and groups like the Cobber River Society, Ruffner, these local partners you have. Then we have a large list of grants and other funding sources. Each are by topic. So we go through each chapter and identify grants and funding sources that the city can pursue to make this plan happen. Again, this is all part of this being an achievable document that we want you guys to actually be able to use. So, in-person activity tonight. I know we're running tight on time, but in the hallway, we have these banners where we have all these actions fully detailed. I want you to, some are posted on the wall back there, others are on the table. If you see something you really like and support, just place a single dot on that. Ask you not to post multiple dots on the same one. Don't stuff the ballot. But you can place as many dots as you want on unique actions. And then if you have a comment, if it's simply, I love this, write that down. Or if you have more detailed feedback, if you think we missed something or need to include something, let us know via those banners. And then online commenting. If you want to do something more in depth, you can go to blueprintirondale.com. There's a comment banner where you can write the page number. You give us all the details. Any suggestion you have, we're going to look at it. We're going to consider it and work that into the plan. We also have a community planning at rpcgb.org that you can email any detailed feedback you have. If you want to write a paragraph, you're welcome to send that to us. So that comment period on the website is open through November 14th. So it gives you a pretty good amount of time to read through the plan. You can take your time with it, and we will send out numerous reminder emails before that closes. So if you're not on our email list, please make sure you signed in tonight. Please make sure you do that anyway, actually. I had a few sign-in sheets going around the room. So that's that for the activity and comment period. And then next steps towards the plan's adoption. We have a public comment period open through November 14th. The draft plan will get revised based on that public comment period following November 14th. We'll make final edits to the plan, and it'll be published online. We'll send out emails about that as well. Then we'll have work sessions with the Planning Commission and Council to make sure our future land use recommendations are on point and where you want them to be. And then the Irondale Planning Commission will hold a public hearing regarding the adoption of the new comprehensive plan. And note that the Planning Commission is the body that adopts the plan, and the council is the body that endorses it. And then it will be considered an adopted plan. Again, that's the city's roadmap to guide your path in the future, but it's not legally binding. So, thank you. That was a mouthful. That's all. Thanks.